Hello and welcome. The role of this video is to give you an insight into this week's assignment, and we are in week 2 as you can see here. So you'll click on week 2 and you have the LAN, and from here you're able to access the PowerPoint. So if I may briefly go through some of the concepts in this PowerPoint that you'll use for your assignment. This is some of the learning objectives. And the key thing is about the systems thinking. So this is when you're working on a project, you need to have what you call a holistic view of how everything is connected with the project. Now, this systems thinking concept is very well illustrated in a number of videos that are contained in your work. So you have this video here that talks about systems thinking, and also this one here. And move down, we have actually 3 of them, and if you watch this, they'll help to reinforce that concept of systems thinking. So when you look at a project, you need to look at all the interrelated concepts and see how you can implement the project to be successful. So these slides give you more information about what systems thinking, systems philosophy. You also use that for system analysis and also for systems management. There is also the information about the organizations and the 3 main organizational frames: the structural frame, the human resource, political, and symbolic frames. And this will go into information about how companies are structured. So we have the functional, this is what we call the traditional one, whereby we have the CEO who is in charge of the whole organization. And then below the CEO, we have the heads of the different departments. So that's what we talk about the functional, because engineering is based on the function. This is an engineer. Manufacturing is based on the function. This is a manufacturer. And VP of IT, that is technology. So we call this the functional organizational structure. We have the project, and this is going to be found in organizations that do a lot of projects. For instance, the consulting companies. And then we have what you call the matrix. So this is a mix in between for those companies that are engaged in projects, but also they have the original or the traditional organizational structure, which we call the functional. Again, we have a couple of videos that will help you to learn more about that. So we have the structure here, and this will help you to be able to see exactly how we can organize in project management. Continuing on that, this gives you a short description of the differences between the different organizations and the role of the project and the project manager. So you can see, for instance, in the functional, project manager's authority is very little because these organizations don't carry out a lot of projects. So you find that the project managers don't have a lot of power. In contrast, if you look at project-based organizational structure, the project manager's role is very, very high because these organizations carry out a lot of projects. So the project managers have a lot of authority. And the same thing you can see here. They are full-time. Project managers, they are full-time in the project-based organizational structure, but they're only part-time in the functional because they're not doing a lot of projects. And then matrix is in between there. We have weak matrix, which is more on the functional side, and then we have the strong matrix, which is more on the project side. So be aware of that. There is also culture, set of shared assumptions, values, and behaviors, and I think there is a short video that will help you understand that concept of organizational culture. So make sure you review that, and that will help you to have a better understanding of what organization structures are and how the culture will play into the organization. So the assignment for this week, like I'll briefly mention, actually ask you to study and get some information on the organizational culture, and I'll show you how to go about doing that. So these are some of the ways in which companies can identify their culture. We talk about the member identity. So for instance, if you go to Target, their employees, they are called the sales associates, and also they have like a uniform that they wear. So that's the way in which the members can identify with. NCCU, we say we are what? Egos. So we identify with that. That's part of one member identity. Ego amplified, all that. Group emphasis, this is where some of the companies, they emphasize more cohesion within the employees, in unit integration, same concept. And then risk tolerance. Some companies, they allow their employees to take risk, especially for companies that are in investment bankers. but within limit. And then open systems focus, whereby you have had some people say that they have open door policy. So that is what this open systems is all about. Stakeholder management, you need to make sure that if you're working on a project, you have a good relationship with all your stakeholders, and you need to be able to identify who they are and know how to manage those relationships, because they'll impact how successful your project is going to be. Okay, continuing on to that, we have the concept of the IT governance. You don't have to spend more time on this, but at least have an idea. When talking about the IT governance, this is very similar to what we call the corporate governance. So the corporate governance is whereby shareholders give the leadership of their organizations to the board and the CEO. For the IT governance is whereby we have a CIO or a CTO, Chief Information Officer, or Chief Technology Officer, being in charge of the IT resources in the organization. And for those companies that have a very good IT governance structure, mostly their projects, IT projects, have a high chance of success, and vice versa. Okay, so continuing down that, we have the concept of the project life cycle. And basically what we are saying is that for a project, there is the beginning, which is the initiation, then you do the planning, and then you execute, and then you control and monitor, and then you close. So that's what you call a project life cycle. Just the same way human beings have a life cycle. You are born, you mature, and then eventually you transition to the next phase. So that's the concept of what you're calling the project life cycle. Deliverable is part of the language of project manager, and you need to be aware of this vocabulary. So we're saying is a product or service produced or provided as part of the project. Now we have a couple of videos also that will help you to illustrate that concept of the project life cycle. Right here, project management life cycle. So it shows you the different levels, the deliverables, all the way like that. And then in terms of the risk, when is the risk higher, when is the risk lower, and things like that. So go through this system development life cycle. If you have taken a class in system analysis and design, you should be aware of system development life cycle, but the concepts are going to be the same. So you also have what you call the predictive life cycle and adaptive life cycle. And this is predictive, is where everything is predetermined. Adaptive is you do as you progress. And in that sense, you'll come across that also in a few slides here. So we have the system development life cycle, predictive, adaptive. So I hope the video will bring this concept much clearer. We have examples here of predictive, what you call the waterfall, and with the waterfall is where we have the analysis, design, construction, testing, and support. And what we mean by this is we start with the analysis, and then after we finish with that, we move to design. After design, you go to construction. After construction, you go to testing. So if you look at this, you can see that almost by the time we are doing the construction, we are midway with the construction, we are done with the analysis, and by the time we finish construction, we are done with the design. So this is suited to some types of project. Not all projects are going to be suited for this, because what you'll find is that when we get to construction and then we realize that maybe the scope has changed and we want to make the changes, it's going to be very expensive for us to make the changes. And for that, we have other types of models, like what you're calling the spiral, whereby with the spiral, what we do is we start with the analysis, and then we do a little bit of design, then we do implementation, and then we do the testing. And if we find that there are some things that are not working properly, we go back to find out exactly why they're not working properly, and then we do more design, implementation, all the way like that. So it's easier for you to make changes in this. So note the difference between the waterfall and the spiral model. And then of course we have what you're calling the agile, which is a new concept, and this is whereby it involves you having more interaction with the users. So with agile, there is more communication, and you do it very similar to the spiral, whereby you're doing piecemeal. So you don't do everything together. You don't do all the analysis, then you do the design. You do a little bit of analysis, a little bit of design, a little bit of construction, a little bit of testing, and then you involve the stakeholders. So that's the main characteristics of what you're calling agile. Now be familiar with the language of project management. You'll come across these management reviews, or what you're calling the phase exit or kill points. And basically what we're saying is, if we take the example of the waterfall model, by the time you finish the analysis, you should have a management review, or what you're calling the phase kill, so that you can see whether you are achieving the objective. And then before you transition, the same thing here, phase management review, all the way down like that. So this is whereby if you realize that the project is maybe costing too much or is taking too long, during these management reviews is when you can terminate the project. That's where we have the concept of the kill points. Okay, so we also mentioned about the outsourcing and offshoring, and know the main difference between outsourcing is outside the organization, offshoring is out of the country. That's the main difference. And we have video that talks more about what is outsourcing, what is offshoring, and what are the advantages and disadvantages. Now we also have what you're calling the virtual team, and all these concepts are very clearly illustrated in the book by Thomas Friedman, The World is Flat. If you have not read that book, I'll encourage you to read that book. It's very, very, very important. So these are some of the issues that are related to project and globalization. There is easier communication. You can have trust, common work practices and tools, all the way like that. So Agile project management, I mentioned that. We also have some videos here that will help you to have a better understanding of what is Agile. So watch the video, is much easier here. And then we have what you're calling Agile, Scrum, and Agile Kanban. So Scrum is a technique that is used to help you with implementing Agile. And then we have Kanban. So these videos will make the points much clearer for you. Okay, so in terms of the assignment for this week, I think the main one that you'll be working on is submitting the interview with the project manager. So I want to make sure that you're aware of that. So this is the link for you to submit the interview with the project manager, and we have the grading rubric here and all the guidelines. So make sure that you submit that assignment before the end of the week. And also you do the quiz and the discussion. So in terms of the discussion, is asking you to look at 3 organizational structures, which we've mentioned, the functional, project, and matrix, and then you pick 2 companies. So in this case, I've picked Target. Then what you can do is you just go to www.target.com, and what you'll see is that is going to give you the front end of the company. So what you want to do is you might want to scroll all the way at the bottom, and then that will give you information about how you can learn more about the company. So in this case, we have these characteristics, what the company is doing, empowering the employees. And you can see when I talk the member identity right here, the uniform that they are wearing and the things that they're doing, all the way like that. And also if you go to about, you can find out more about what Target is doing. What are their corporate responsibilities? What are they doing with the community? And also you can find out more about their leadership team. And you can see how they are structured. So how many females do they have? How many people of color do they have? All the way like that. So that will give you more information about their culture. The same thing if you want to do that for another company, like for instance, let's say Microsoft. Yes, so this is Microsoft, and the same thing if you go to about Microsoft, you can see the things that they're doing. It tells you what they believe in. And then you can see in terms of global diversity, the things that they're doing, diversity plus inclusion equals to success. And this is also part of the culture, what they're doing for the Asians, for the blacks, all the way like that. If you go to the investor relationships, you can see their annual reports. Scrolling down, you can see the news about the company, and that will help you to have a better understanding of what the company is doing. If you go to the biographies, you can actually be able to see who their leaders are. So this is the senior leadership. You can see how many females they have, how many people of color they have. And then the same thing, if you go to the board of directors, you can see that. So that gives you information about the organizational structure. So you'll pick 2 companies, go through them, and then you compare and see whether there are any similarities or any differences. And that is how you're going to be answering that question for this week.